Everybody, I'm so excited to welcome our next guest back to the show. Our staff writer, Mark Scheig, over at the Hockey Writers for the Columbus Blue Jackets, our credentials manager running the show for us writers at the Hockey Writers, always doing a great job, and host of the Hockey Writers Live, which is also off to a very hot start. Mark, welcome, and thank you very much for coming back.
As always, Andrew and Peter, thank you for having me. I really appreciate this.
So we'll start it off right where we want to go with this is Nick Foligno coming to the Maple Leafs. What are your
Mhm.
thoughts and what can we expect in Toronto?
I'm not surprised. I mean, you kind of look in hindsight being the best 2020. His dad played with the Leafs. You obviously grew up then watching them as a result. So you knew that there was a connection there. It's just a matter of with Toronto's cap situation, could they find the right deal, make it work? And yeah, they were able to get it to work out. And what you guys can expect is just leadership. Someone who can play up and down the lineup anywhere from top six to bottom six. And there's really only one way he knows how to play, and that's with full effort, dedication. Not maybe not going to give you the offense that he used to be able to bring, but he's going to be one of the more dependable defensive players. So if he gets stuck in a bottom six role and a checking role, that's going to be very effective to let the skill guys do their thing. Or if he even gets thrown in the top six on the left side, maybe with John Tavares, he could be just as effective there. It's just Sheldon Keefe is going to have options with him, and it's going to be really interesting to see where he settles in. I mean, he can take faceoffs, he can kill penalties. So just think of any situation that's going to be important for the Leafs coming down the stretch and into the playoffs. Don't be surprised if you find Foligno there.
Mark, we saw what happened in the bubble last year with the Jackets and, the effort and the lack of skill, but the impact that everybody had, including Foligno, did to the Maple Leafs. Do you think that he's the answer to help be that player to help push them forward and make that deep playoff run?
Is he the actual answer? We'll find out. But is he someone that's going to come in and certainly help them? Yes. I mean, when he spoke to the media, he was asked about the bubble experience, and he came out and said, that's a team that's on the rise. And he thought that they were really close on that up close personal experience of being able to play them in the bubble. So he feels like that he's going to be able to kind of take them to that next level, especially defensively. I mean, if there's anything that, Leafs fans know, it's, they'll have some good stretches of play in the playoffs, but then when all the chips are down, they haven't been able to get over the top. And I think that getting this kind of a boost, I know that some people may have wanted Taylor Hall, but the Leafs already have enough skill. They need guys that can play the other side of the puck just as well, because when playoffs get there, it's going to be tighter checking, going to be more physical. Foligno's more of a fit for what the Leafs need at this point, and he's going to help so many people in that room, especially some of the younger players in there. He says he has a lot of playoff experience. He was on that team that beat Tampa, as you mentioned, on that team that played in the bubble. So, yeah, he's seen a lot of different things, and I think that it's going to be a huge asset for that team.
Mark, you kind of touched on it, how he's going to help the room. And one of the things we talked about on Maple Leafs Lounge, yesterday was that the Leafs now have four former captains on their team, including John Tavares.
Yep.
What does Nick Foligno bring that maybe is different from, say, a Joe Thornton, say a Jason Spezza, say a John Tavares?
Well, if you take a look at the playoff experience for all of them, what do you see?
Not a whole lot.
Not a whole heck of a lot. And I'm not saying Nick Foligno's done a lot in terms of going on and winning a cup or whatnot, but he has won a couple of different series, and he one of the biggest upsets ever in Tampa Bay. I mean, who saw that coming when it happened?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't.
It's it's going to be the big moments. Think back to that Tampa Bay series. It was 3-0 in the second period. In game one against the Lightning, and everyone thought, oh, the Lightning's just going to sweep on by. Nick Foligno gets a breakaway and beats Vasilevsky to make it 3-1. That goal, a lot of people believe, turned that series around, turned the momentum over to Columbus. He also scored one of the biggest goals in franchise history, in Columbus history, back in the playoffs against the Penguins when he scored in overtime at Nationwide Arena. So he has the propensity to rise up to a moment when the opportunity is there, and he's done it multiple times. And I just think that overall experience is going to help the room, but also knowing when to be able to speak up. There's, as you guys mentioned, there's a lot of experience. There's a lot of leadership in that room. I think Foligno is going to go there to be able to just impart what he knows and speak up when it's necessary. And I think it's going to work the other way around. I think some guys are going to go to him and say, what do we need to do here? I just think that it's never a bad thing to have those kind of voices in the room, especially someone that's been in the battle who plays the way that he does. So I think that you're going to see a more physical Leafs team, and I think you're going to see a more defensively oriented Leafs team, especially if Foligno's given important minutes down the stretch.
Mark, you talked to Jarmo Kekalainen a few weeks ago on the THW Live with the Trade Deadline edition, and you touched up on the deadline and the fact that Columbus could be sellers. Did you get a sense that, with your talk with him, that Foligno was most likely going to be dealt if it was becoming a reality? And what was the initial price that he wanted for him, and did he get what he wanted?
Good question, Peter. It turned out that, we knew there were going to be sellers. Pretty much knew David Savard was gone. We knew Nick Foligno would be gone if he was okay with it. I think the Blue Jackets handled it well, being able to go to him to say, here's what we got. And as it turns out, there were multiple teams that were willing to give up a first-round pick for him. So it came down to my understanding of it, Kekalainen going to Foligno and say, here's what's going on here. What do you think? And then Foligno in his introductory press conference said, it just felt right in my heart to go to Toronto. And so ultimately, that's the way that it worked out. And it's not to say that Foligno won't sign back in the offseason. He could. He still has his family. He's leaving his family back in Columbus due to COVID and schooling and things like that. So there's still a lot of emotion there. And there's certainly a way back for him to get to the Blue Jackets as an unrestricted free agent. But for now, they absolutely got what they were looking for. They wanted a first-round pick. They're kind of in a reloading stage where they need to build back their prospects. They need to be able to, as they're struggling right now, they really need to get back on the right foot here. And being able to trade both Savard for a first and Foligno for a first, that's a haul, especially in the flat cap sort of situation, because it opens a lot of options for them now. They could make the picks if there's good enough players there. He made the interesting point about, and Peter, you're going to be in the middle of this, scouting, and there's going to be a lot of people that haven't been able to see the players because, quite frankly, they haven't played. So there could be a lot of hidden gems possibly gathered later in the 21 draft because there hasn't been viewings, there hasn't been enough play time. I mean, scouting is going to be very interesting to see how it works. But on top of that, think of the flat cap world. You've got a Seattle expansion draft coming up. And if a team that is afraid they're going to lose a player to Seattle for nothing, why not call the Columbus Blue Jackets? Maybe they're a fit for Columbus because they're going to be looking for young, controllable assets, and they've got multiple first-round picks. So do you want to lose them to Seattle for nothing, or do you want to give them up and possibly get a first-round pick from the Columbus Blue Jackets? You decide. So there's a lot of options that are out there. They definitely got the price that they're looking for. And as a seller, Columbus has to be considered a winner in the trade deadline.
You kind of mentioned that, there is a possibility that he comes back, which was kind of where I was going with my next question. So I'm going to jump over to Vivalainen. Yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
It's Sunday morning, so it's tough sometimes. But obviously, we talked to you before about the Leafs prospects in net and how Columbus has built this phenomenal line of prospects when it comes to goaltending. Mm-hmm. What did the Leafs get in that prospect?
Very interesting prospect. Vivalainen got caught in a numbers game in Columbus. And you consider the depth chart now, Korpisalo, Merzlikins in the NHL, both when things are right are considered a number one. Matisse Kivlenieks is in Cleveland, has been up to the NHL and played in a couple of games. He's probably the most likely one to be exposed to Seattle. And then I think the highest upside goalie of all, we haven't even mentioned, is also just arrived in Cleveland and is 2-0 in the AHL since arriving from Russia, and that's Danil Tarasov. So there really wasn't room anymore for Vivalainen, given where the Blue Jackets were at. But he had a really good year in Finland before coming over, and he's somebody that I think is going to be very interesting. He's got some size, got some athleticism, little bit of a struggle adjusting to the North American game, but that's kind of to be expected. And the way the Columbus situation worked out, he didn't maybe get into as many games as they hoped for, but I would watch out for him. He's somebody that I think could eventually make an impact. I mean, you have a little bit of time at this point, but I was a big fan of him. He was projected by many to be an NHL goaltender. So if he continues along the right development path, I think the Leafs do a pretty good job of that. I would not be surprised to see him make some sort of an impact within a couple of years within the Maple Leafs.
You just mentioned another deal that the Maple Leafs made early on when they traded Mikko Lehtinen in order to get Vehviläinen, but they also made a third deal way before the Nick Foligno one in acquiring Riley Nash. And he was someone that I really wanted Toronto to sign when he was a free agent after the Boston series, because I thought he really stood out in terms of his ability to go in on the forecheck, be aggressive, and still be that, depth centerman that could shore up the bottom six. How difficult was it to see someone like him, given the impact that, given the fact that maybe the Blue Jackets weren't in a competitive spot, he was still a major factor for the team?
Yeah. He was their number one center for a while, Peter. I mean, that's how bad the center depth on the Blue Jackets was this year once Dubois got traded. I mean, you've had a mix of youngsters, and the most accomplished center in that group was Riley Nash. And, unfortunately, the injury derailed him, but they were able to work with the Leafs to be able to work out a deal for conditional picks. So the Blue Jackets are happy because they get a little something for him when they didn't think that they were. But his timeline was 4 to 6 weeks, so that would put it right to the beginning of the playoffs. And if there is anything Nash can do, again, there's your bottom six center who can play in important situations. He can take faceoffs, is defensively responsible. So I think you're seeing a trend. I mean, it even started in the last offseason with Simmons, now with Foligno, now with Riley. Now, I think the bubble experience really opened the eyes of the Maple Leafs that they're onto something. They have the top end skill that's required. Depends on what you guys think of Morgan Riley. You got a really good defenseman there. I know goaltending's obviously been a question with Freddie's health and Jack Campbell doing some amazing things with that streak. But the obvious question is going to be, how's the goaltending going to hold up? But forward-wise, I think they made it a priority that they want to be harder to play against. Because if there's anything that Columbus was able to do in that bubble series, they were able to physically dominate. And I think now they're in a position where the Leafs are at least able to match that against teams, and they still have the top-end skill. They still have the same guys that can fill the net almost at will. So it's going to be really interesting to see if the new combination, they can find the chemistry to be that team that could be really hard to play against. Because if they are, then they're a legitimate threat.
Well, Mark, as always, thank you very much for coming on and giving us some great insight into not only the Maple Leafs new players coming from Columbus, but also your Columbus Blue Jackets. As always, everyone give Mark a follow on Twitter. Has some great content coming out, and continue all the great work that you're doing with THW Live.
Yeah, I appreciate both of you. Peter and Andrew, thanks for the time, and really enjoy the show.
Thanks again, Mark.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.